Chicago, present day. The maternity ward of St. Mary's Hospital smelled like bleach, warm plastic, and something Ethan Miller couldn't quite name. Sterility mixed with the faint sweetness of newborn life. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, white and merciless, flattening every shadow, exposing every detail. Nurses walked briskly in pale blue scrubs, pushing carts with rattling trays. Somewhere down the hall, a baby wailed, then quieted as if the sound had been muffled by God himself. Ethan sat in a molded plastic chair, knees bouncing. He was 32, tall, with dark hair that never stayed where he wanted it, and the kind of soft, earnest eyes that made strangers trust him too easily. He wasn't handsome in the striking sense, not the kind of man who turned heads, but he had something else: reliability. People always said he was steady, a rock, the type of guy you could count on. At least, that's what he tried to be. Right now, he felt anything but steady. His wife, Claire, was behind those double doors, laboring to bring their first child into the world. He'd held her hand through the contractions, whispered reassurances, even cracked clumsy jokes until a nurse asked him to step out so they could prep her for delivery. His parents insisted he take a break, dragged him down to the hospital cafe for a cup of bitter coffee and a muffin he didn't touch. He'd gone because he didn't want to seem like a burden, but every step away from Claire had gnawed at him. And now, here he was again, back in the waiting area, hands clasped tight, heart pounding. He thought about the past 9 months, how they'd painted the nursery a soft gray, how he'd assembled the crib at 2 a.m., swearing under his breath when the instructions made no sense. He'd spent hours reading books with titles like The Expectant Father and Your Baby's First Year, underlining sections about sleep cycles and bottle sterilization. He wanted to be prepared, wanted to be more than enough. Because deep down, in the quiet corners of his mind, Ethan never quite believed he deserved Claire. Claire was the kind of woman people noticed. Blonde hair that caught light like gold, laughter that filled a room. She carried herself with a confidence that had drawn Ethan to her instantly when they met at a friend's rooftop party 5 years ago. She had been telling some story about traveling across Europe with only a backpack and a guitar, and Ethan had stood there, mesmerized. When she turned her eyes on him, he felt like he'd been chosen. But Claire came with history, a past Ethan rarely asked about, but always felt looming. Chief among those shadows was Ryan Taylor, the man she'd dated off and on for nearly a decade before Ethan entered the picture. Ryan was everything Ethan wasn't: loud, charming, reckless, the type who made bad decisions sound like adventures. Claire had left him, or so she said. She wanted stability, she wanted something real, and Ethan had promised her both. Still, there were moments when Ryan's ghost haunted their marriage. A name dropped in conversation, a song on the radio that made Claire go quiet, a photograph Ethan once found shoved in the back of a drawer. He told himself it didn't matter. Everyone had exes. Everyone had mistakes. What mattered was that she'd chosen him. The double doors swung open, and a nurse in pink scrubs stepped out, her face tired but smiling. "Mr. Miller?" she asked. Ethan jumped to his feet. Yes, that's me." "Congratulations," the nurse said warmly. "You have a healthy baby boy." His heart stopped, then surged. A boy. He was a father. The words echoed in his head like a song he couldn't place. "Can I see him?" "Claire. How's Claire?" "She's resting. You'll see her soon. Follow me." The nurse led him down the corridor, past closed doors and muted monitors. The world blurred around him. All Ethan could think was my son, my son. They entered the recovery room. Claire lay pale and exhausted on the bed, hair plastered to her forehead, but she was smiling weakly. In a clear bassinet beside her, wrapped in a striped hospital blanket, was the smallest, most fragile thing Ethan had ever seen. His son. Ethan stepped closer, breath caught in his throat. The baby's face was red and scrunched, eyes shut tight, fists balled up like he was ready for a fight. Ethan reached out a trembling hand, not quite touching, afraid he'd break him. "He's perfect," Ethan whispered. Claire's eyes flickered toward him, unreadable, then softened. "Do you want to hold him?" "God, yes." The nurse lifted the baby carefully and placed him in Ethan's arms. The weight was shocking, not heavy, but undeniable. Solid, real. The baby stirred, opened his eyes for a fleeting second, and Ethan felt something inside him collapse and rebuild all at once. "I'm your dad," he said, voice cracking. I'm here. He looked down at the tiny ankle, at the plastic bracelet fastened there. The band was white, the ink black, the letters sharp and unyielding. Baby boy Taylor. Ethan blinked. His smile faltered. Taylor? Not Miller. For a second, he thought his eyes were playing tricks. He leaned closer. The letters were clear. Taylor. His stomach twisted. His throat went dry. Excuse me, he said, turning to the nurse. This says Taylor. That's not right. Our last name is Miller. The nurse frowned, leaned over to check. That's odd. She lifted a tablet from her pocket, tapped through screens. Her brows furrowed. No, the system says Taylor. Mother's name, Claire Taylor. Father's information, also listed as Ryan Taylor. Ethan's world tilted sideways. That's impossible, he stammered. There's been a mistake. I'm the father. Ethan Miller. She's Claire Miller. Look at her wristband. The nurse glanced at Claire's wristband. It did read Claire Miller. But the baby's file said otherwise. Ethan looked at his wife. Claire wouldn't meet his eyes. The silence in the hospital room was suffocating. Ethan's arms stiffened as he clutched the newborn, suddenly afraid to hold him, as though the truth written on that plastic band had transformed the child into a stranger. His eyes darted back and forth, from the bracelet to Claire, from the bracelet to the nurse. Ma'am, the nurse said carefully, looking at Claire now. Is there a reason your records list Taylor instead of Miller? Claire's lips parted, then closed again. Her skin had gone paler than the hospital sheets. She tried to sit up, then winced and fell back against the pillows. It's just a mistake, she whispered. But her voice trembled in a way Ethan had never heard before. The nurse didn't look convinced. She tapped something into her tablet, muttering under her breath. Could be a clerical error. I'll check with admissions. Then she turned and left the room, her shoes squeaking faintly against the linoleum. The door clicked shut, and Ethan was alone with Claire and the baby. He lowered himself into the chair, still holding the child, but unable to stop staring at the bracelet. The letters burned into his brain. Taylor. Ryan Taylor. Finally, he looked up. Claire, he said, his voice low, steady, the kind of steady that comes before a storm. What the hell is going on? Claire swallowed hard. Her eyes glistened, darting anywhere but at him. The floor, the ceiling, the four-stand by her bed. Ethan, please, not right now. I just gave birth. Not right now. He almost laughed, but it came out broken, ragged. The nurse just told me our son, my son, is registered under another man's name. Ryan's name. At that, Claire's eyes snapped shut. Ethan felt his chest tighten, rage and fear clawing at him from the inside. Tell me the truth, he said, his voice dropping lower. Don't lie to me. Not about this. Claire's lips trembled. She shook her head weakly. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, Ethan snapped. Because what I think is that while I was out getting coffee with my parents, his throat closed up. He couldn't even say the words. You did something. You brought him back into this. Claire pressed her hands to her face, sobbing quietly. I made a mistake. The words sliced through him like glass. Ethan's entire body went cold. He thought about the years they had shared, holidays with her family, the night he proposed under the lights of Millennium Park, the mornings when she leaned over him in bed and whispered, I'm so glad it's you. Every memory warped, tainted, bleeding into this moment. He wanted to scream, to throw the chair, to tear the bracelet from the baby's ankle and shred it to pieces. But the child stirred, let out a small whimper, and Ethan froze. He looked down at the baby's tiny face, at the soft skin and helpless eyes. Innocent. The baby wasn't to blame. Gently, he placed the child back in the bassinet, then turned back to Claire. When his voice was hoarse, Claire wouldn't answer. When Claire, her shoulders shook as she whispered, 3 days ago. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. 3 days. He stopped, the timeline crashing into him like a wave. Claire had been admitted early for monitoring. He remembered the phone call. She'd said she was having contractions, nothing too serious, but the doctors wanted to keep her overnight. He had rushed to the hospital, stayed with her until she was settled. The next day, his boss called him in for a meeting he couldn't avoid, and Claire had insisted she was fine. She told him to go, and while he was gone, Ryan came. She whispered, her voice breaking. He heard I was here. He said he wanted to make sure I was okay. I was scared, Ethan. I was alone. And, don't, Ethan said sharply. Don't you dare justify it. Claire's sobs filled the room. She curled into herself, clutching the blanket. Ethan stood there, staring at her, his mind unraveling. He had always feared he wasn't enough for her, that some part of her heart still belonged to Ryan. And now that fear had been branded onto his son's first breath. The door opened again, and the nurse returned, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller," she said politely, though her eyes flickered with discomfort. "I've spoken with admissions. There was no error. The system has Ryan Taylor listed as father. If you'd like, we can correct it, but we'll need signed documentation." "Correct it?" Ethan barked. "How about you put my goddamn name where it belongs in the first place?" The nurse shifted uneasily. "Of course. We'll need Mrs. Miller to confirm." Ethan turned to Claire. "Sign it," he said. His voice was ice. Claire's hand trembled as she reached for the clipboard the nurse offered. She scrawled her signature, not looking up, not meeting Ethan's eyes. When the nurse left again, the room felt colder, emptier. Ethan walked to the window, staring out at the gray Chicago skyline. Snowflakes drifted lazily past the glass, melting on the ledge. He pressed his fists into the windowsill, knuckles white. Behind him, Claire whispered, "Ethan, please. Don't hate me." He closed his eyes. He thought of the baby's bracelet, the name Taylor, the timeline, the confession. Something inside him cracked, but he swallowed the sound, held it deep. He turned back to her, his face unreadable. "I don't even know who I'm married to anymore." The baby stirred again, a soft whimper filling the silence. Ethan looked at him, at the fragile body swaddled in hospital cotton. His son, or was he? Doubt coiled inside him, black and poisonous. For the first time, Ethan wondered if the life he had been building, the house, the crib, the dreams, wasn't his at all. The days after the birth blurred into a haze of sleepless nights, visiting relatives, and quiet, festering silence. Ethan stayed by Claire's side, but he might as well have been a ghost. He changed diapers, fetched bottles, learned how to swaddle, and whispered lullabies in the dark. To anyone else, the nurses, the grandparents, he looked like a proud, if exhausted, new father. But inside, he was unraveling. Every time he looked at his son, he felt a war inside him. The baby's face was tiny, indistinct, malleable like clay. Was that his nose? Claire's mouth? Or, God forbid, Ryan's jawline? Every expression, every twitch of those little features made Ethan wonder. The hospital bracelet still haunted him. Even after they changed the paperwork, even after his name was restored in the records, he couldn't forget the sight of those 5 letters, Taylor. He dreamed about it at night, woke up sweating. The echo of it burned into his skull. Claire tried to act as if nothing had happened. She cooed at the baby, thanked Ethan for his help, even kissed his cheek once in a fragile, desperate gesture. But the wall between them was unshakable. Whenever Ethan looked at her, he saw the truth. 3 days before their son's birth, she had let Ryan into her hospital room. And whatever had happened there, it had been enough to poison everything. On the 4th night home, Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He waited until Claire had fallen asleep, her breathing slow and even beside the bassinet, before he slipped out into the living room. He sat on the couch in the dark, phone in hand, scrolling through her messages. Most were gone, deleted. But Ethan knew how to dig deeper. He had once worked in IT, back when he was younger, before switching to project management. Old habits surfaced now. He downloaded recovery software, bypassed settings, pulled fragments of deleted texts. The words hit him like punches. "I need you. Don't come. I can't stop thinking about you." And one from 3 days before the birth. "I'm scared. Can you come?" Sent from Claire. Ethan stared at the glowing screen, bile rising in his throat. His wife, carrying his child, lying in a hospital bed, and she had called Ryan. Not him. Ryan. He slammed the phone down, chest heaving. He wanted to march into the bedroom, wake her, demand every detail. But he didn't. The baby stirred, and the tiny sound cut through his rage like a blade. Ethan forced himself to breathe. Not here. Not now. Instead, he dug deeper. He pulled up phone records, piecing together gaps. He saw calls made late at night, numbers that matched Ryan's old contact. Emails, too, one buried under junk mail, a subject line that read, "I'll always be here for you." Ethan's hands shook. He rubbed his temples, whispering to himself, "Why? Why him? Why now?" But he already knew the answer. Because he wasn't enough. Because he never had been. The next morning, over weak coffee and the cries of their newborn, Ethan confronted Claire. Why did you call him? His voice was quiet, but steel ran through it. Claire froze, her hands tightening on the bottle she was holding. What are you talking about? I saw the messages. Her face went white. Ethan, don't lie. Not anymore. You texted him. You invited him. You asked him to come to the hospital. Claire's lip trembled. She stared down at the baby in her arms, then whispered, I was scared. You weren't there. I needed someone. I was there. Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. Every step, every appointment, every night when you couldn't sleep. I was there. And the second I step out, you call him? Tears spilled down her cheeks. It was a mistake. One moment of weakness. Ethan laughed bitterly. One moment of weakness that could destroy everything. Claire tried to reach for him, but he pulled back. Ethan, please. He doesn't matter. You're my husband. This is your son. Ethan looked at the baby, then back at her. Is he? The words landed like a gunshot. Claire flinched, clutching the child tighter. You know he's yours, she whispered. Do I? How can I believe anything you say? The fight ended there, not with resolution, but with silence. Ethan stormed out onto the balcony, staring at the gray Chicago streets below. Snow drifted down, covering cars and sidewalks, muffling the city in a blanket of white. His breath steamed in the air as he whispered to himself, I need to know. I need proof. That night, after Claire fell asleep again, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. He ordered a DNA test kit online. It was a simple process, swabs, instructions, prepaid shipping. Discreet. Anonymous. He typed in the shipping address, his hands shaking. The next morning, he intercepted the package before Claire could see it. He tucked it into the drawer of his desk, hidden under tax forms and old bills. From that moment on, every diaper change, every feeding, every time he held his son was shadowed by the looming question, is he mine? The baby's cries became accusations. His little fingers curling around Ethan's felt like chains. He loved the child. God, he did, but the doubt gnawed at him. Claire noticed the change. She tried to reach him, to pull him back, but he withdrew. He avoided her touch, her gaze, her voice. Nights grew colder, the bed a gulf between them. One evening, Claire's mother stopped by, cooing over the baby, praising Ethan for being such a hands-on dad. Ethan smiled weakly, but inside, he felt like a fraud. He wondered if everyone could see it, if everyone knew. Later, when the apartment was quiet again, Claire whispered to him in the dark. You're scaring me, Ethan. Good, he muttered. She flinched. What's happening to you? What's happening to me? He turned on her, eyes burning. You happened to me. You and him. Claire's eyes filled with tears. She tried to touch his arm, but he pulled away. Don't, he snapped. Don't act like you care. She stared at him, broken, and whispered, I made a mistake. But you're my husband. He doesn't matter. Ethan's laugh was hollow. He mattered enough for you to call him instead of me. Silence stretched between them, thick and poisonous. That night, Ethan dreamed of the bracelet again. He saw the baby's ankle, the white plastic band, the black letters spelling out the truth. Taylor, Taylor, Taylor. When he woke, his pillow was wet with sweat. He rose quietly, walked to the desk, and pulled out the hidden kit. He turned it over in his hands, the cardboard cool against his skin. Soon, he thought. Soon he would know. And once he knew, there would be no going back. The DNA kit sat in the bottom drawer of Ethan's desk like a ticking bomb. Every day he thought about it. Every night he imagined tearing it open, swabbing the baby's cheek, sealing the envelope. But he didn't. Not yet. Because the moment he did, everything would change. Until then, he lived in limbo. The apartment became a battlefield of silence. Ethan moved through rooms without looking at Claire, without touching her. He did what needed to be done for the baby, feeding, burping, rocking him at 3 a.m. But all of it felt mechanical, detached. His mind wasn't on lullabies or diaper rash. It was on betrayal, on Ryan, on the bracelet. Claire noticed. She grew more frantic as the days passed, trying to reach him. She made his favorite dinners, though half the time they went cold on the table. She touched his arm when she passed him in the kitchen, only to feel him stiffen. She whispered apologies in the dark, but he never answered. One evening, after putting the baby down, she cornered him in the hallway. Ethan, we can't go on like this, she said, her voice sharp with desperation. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You think I don't know that? Then talk to me. Scream at me. Do something. Just don't shut me out. His laugh was hollow. You don't want me to say what I'm thinking. Try me. He looked at her then, really looked, and the words clawed their way out of him. Every time I look at him, I see Ryan. Every time I hear him cry, I wonder if I'm comforting another man's son. Claire recoiled like he'd struck her. Tears pooled in her eyes, but she forced herself to speak. He's yours. Ethan, he is. I swear it. Your word doesn't mean much anymore, does it? She slapped him then. The sound cracked through the hallway, sharp and raw. They froze, staring at each other in the stunned silence afterward. Claire's hand shook, her chest heaving. Ethan's cheek stung, but he didn't flinch. Do the test, she whispered, broken. If you don't believe me, do the damn test. But stop torturing us both like this. Her words hung in the air, daring him. That night, when the apartment was finally still, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with the kit. He opened it slowly, his hands trembling, the cardboard tearing like skin. Inside, sterile swabs, envelopes, instructions printed in calm, clinical font. He crept into the nursery. His son lay in the crib, tiny chest rising and falling, fingers twitching in dream. Ethan leaned over, heart pounding, swab in hand. He hesitated. The baby stirred, eyelids fluttering. Ethan froze, suddenly overwhelmed by guilt. What kind of father sneaks into his child's room with a Q-tip, doubting his very existence? But then the image returned. Claire in a hospital bed, Ryan at her side, whispering, touching, filling the space Ethan had left. Rage pushed away guilt. Ethan swabbed quickly, then sealed the sample. The test was done, but waiting for the results was agony. Days stretched like years. Ethan checked the mail obsessively, paranoid that Claire would find the envelope first. He snapped at coworkers, ignored friends, shut himself away. The paranoia didn't stop with the baby. Soon, Ethan started watching Claire too. He tracked her movements, glanced at her phone whenever she set it down. One afternoon, while she showered, he dug through her purse, finding nothing but a half-empty wallet and gum wrappers. Still, the lack of evidence felt suspicious. One night, unable to sleep, he walked the apartment, every creak of the floorboards echoing. He paused outside the nursery door, listening to the baby's soft breaths, and thought, if he's not mine, what then? Do I stay? Do I leave? Do I hand him over to Ryan? The questions tore at him, no answers coming. The next morning, he caught himself staring at the baby too long, searching for Ryan's features. Claire noticed and snapped. Stop it, Ethan. He's a baby, not a damn suspect. Ethan's eyes burned. You made him one. Her face crumpled. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I hate myself enough already. Do you think I don't replay it every day? Do you think I don't want to rip that moment out of my life? Ethan said nothing. She looked up at him, broken. You're killing us. You're killing this family. Maybe it's already dead, he whispered. The words cut her to the bone. She turned away, shoulders shaking. The tension escalated further when Claire's phone buzzed one afternoon. Ethan was holding the baby when he saw the screen light up. A number, unsaved, unfamiliar. His stomach lurched. He handed the baby to Claire and snatched the phone from the counter. Who is this? He demanded. Claire's face drained of color. Give it back. Who is it? She grabbed for the phone, but he held it out of reach. His thumb hovered over the screen. He wanted to answer, to hear Ryan's voice on the other end, to confirm his darkest suspicions. Claire's scream stopped him. It's my sister. God, Ethan, it's my sister's new number. Call it if you don't believe me. The baby started crying, the sound shrill, desperate. Ethan stood frozen, phone in hand, heart hammering, shame bleeding into rage. Slowly, he lowered the phone. Claire snatched it back, clutching it like a weapon. This isn't love anymore, she said, her voice shaking. It's poison. Ethan didn't answer. He walked away, into the nursery, closing the door behind him. Inside, he sank into the rocking chair, holding the crying baby against his chest. He whispered, it's going to be okay, though he wasn't sure if he was lying to his son or to himself. When the baby finally calmed, Ethan stared into his tiny face. You're mine, he whispered fiercely. You have to be mine. But doubt still gnawed at him, relentless, merciless. 2 days later, the envelope arrived. Ethan found it in the mailbox, his hands shaking as he pulled it free. A plain white package, no logo, no fanfare. Just the truth inside. He stuffed it under his jacket, carried it upstairs like contraband. In the apartment, he locked himself in the bathroom, the baby's cries muffled through the door, Claire's footsteps pacing outside. He sat on the toilet lid, tearing the envelope open with clumsy fingers. His breath came in shallow gasps. He unfolded the papers, scanning lines of clinical jargon until his eyes landed on the only words that mattered. The paper shook in Ethan's hands. His eyes blurred as he read the results once, then again, as if repetition would change the words. Probability of paternity, 99. 99%. The baby was his. His blood. His DNA. The relief hit him first, crashing over him like cold water. He pressed a fist to his mouth, stifling a sound that was half laugh, half sob. For days, weeks, he had lived in torment, picturing Ryan's face in every twitch of his son's features. Now, at last, the answer was clear. The baby was his. But the relief didn't last. It was quickly drowned by something darker. Because the test proved the child was his, yes. But it didn't erase what Claire had done. It didn't erase the image of Ryan in that hospital room, sitting close to her while Ethan wasn't there. It didn't erase the words, "I made a mistake." The truth had given him his son, but it hadn't given him his wife back. Ethan sat there on the cold bathroom tile for a long time, the paper limp in his hands, the muffled sound of Claire calling his name through the door. Finally, he stood, folded the document, and walked out. Claire was waiting in the hallway, eyes red and puffy. "Ethan, what is it?" "Did the results." He handed her the paper. Her hands trembled as she read it. She let out a sob, covering her mouth. "Oh, thank God," she whispered. Tears spilled down her cheeks, relief softening her face. She looked up at him, desperate, hopeful. "See? He's yours. I told you. We can move on from this." Ethan stared at her, expression flat. "Move on." "Yes." She stepped closer, reaching for his arm. "It was a mistake, Ethan. A horrible, stupid mistake. But now we know. He's yours. He's ours. We can fix this. We can be a family again." He pulled away, her touch burning him like acid. "You don't get it, do you?" His voice was low, shaking. "It's not just about the baby. It's about you. About what you did." "I told you why," she cried. "I was scared. I was alone." "You weren't alone." His voice cracked, rising. "I was there, Claire. Every step of the way. And when I wasn't, it was because you told me to go. You pushed me out so you could pull him in." Her sobs grew louder. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it?" Ethan demanded. "Tell me exactly what happened in that room. Tell me what you did with him 3 days before you gave birth to my son." Claire's mouth opened, then closed. She shook her head violently. "I can't. Because you know it'll kill me," Ethan said bitterly. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint cries of the baby down the hall. Ethan's chest heaved, his vision tunneling. He had the truth in his hands, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Finally, Claire whispered, "I love you." Ethan laughed, a sound so hollow it frightened even him. "No, you don't. You love the idea of me. The man who builds the crib, who buys the diapers, who stays steady while you fall apart. But when it mattered most, you didn't turn to me. You turned to him." Her knees buckled. She slid down the wall, sobbing into her hands. Ethan stood over her, trembling, his fists clenched. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to walk out the door and never come back. But then the baby's cries grew louder, desperate, cutting through the storm. Ethan turned toward the nursery. He opened the door and found his son flailing in the crib, tiny face red, fists clenched. Ethan scooped him up, cradling him against his chest. The baby quieted almost instantly, his small body relaxing into Ethan's warmth. The weight of him was real, grounding. His son. His. Ethan pressed his lips to the baby's head, breathing in the scent of powder and milk. For the first time since the birth, he felt something solid under his feet. The child was his. That was undeniable. That was truth. But when he turned back toward the hallway, Claire was still there, broken on the floor. And Ethan knew nothing between them could ever return to what it was. He carried the baby into the living room, settling into the rocking chair. Claire followed slowly, her face streaked with tears. She knelt beside him, touching his arm. "Please, Ethan," she whispered. "Don't do this. Don't give up on us. I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes." Just don't take him from me. Ethan rocked slowly, staring down at his son. His voice was quiet, almost tender. I'm not taking him from you. But you already took everything from me. Claire sobbed, clutching at his leg, but Ethan didn't move. He rocked, steady, holding the child close, his gaze fixed on the future he couldn't yet imagine. The climax wasn't a fight with fists or a slammed door. It was this, the unbearable silence of a marriage shattered beyond repair, the knowledge that truth had freed him from doubt, but not from pain. The DNA test had given him his son, but it had also forced him to face the real question. What do you do when the person you love betrays you in the one moment that mattered most? Ethan didn't have an answer. Not yet. But he knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same. The weeks that followed the DNA results moved like molasses, slow, heavy, suffocating. Ethan went through the motions of life, but it felt like he was watching himself from a distance. He woke when the baby cried, warmed bottles, changed diapers, rocked the tiny body back to sleep. He showed up to work on video calls, answered emails, pretended to listen. He smiled weakly when family visited, telling them he was tired but happy. But inside, everything was hollow. The test had answered the question that had consumed him. The child was his. His blood, his DNA. But it hadn't silenced the deeper wound, the betrayal that gnawed at him every time he looked at Claire. Their apartment turned into a house divided. Ethan moved into the guest room under the pretense of not disturbing Claire with my snoring. Nobody questioned it. But behind closed doors, the truth was plain. He couldn't share a bed with her. Couldn't stand the smell of her shampoo on the pillow beside him. Couldn't sleep next to the woman who had once been his anchor and now felt like a stranger. Claire tried. She begged. She suggested counseling, offered to quit her job to focus on their family, promised transparency, passwords, phone, everything. She brought him his favorite coffee in the mornings, left little notes on his desk. I love you. I'm sorry. Please come back to me. Ethan read them, then slid them into a drawer without reply. At night, when the baby finally slept, Claire would corner him. Ethan, talk to me. Please. Don't shut me out like this. He would stare at her, blank. What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? I don't. That I trust you? I can't. Her tears no longer moved him. They were part of the background now, like the hum of the refrigerator or the creak of the floorboards. One evening, after a particularly long day, Claire stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed, eyes red but her voice sharp. You can't keep punishing me like this forever. Either we fight for this marriage, or we end it. But this silence, is killing us both. Ethan leaned against the counter, sipping from a glass of water. His face was calm, too calm. The marriage ended in that hospital room. You just didn't notice. Her face crumpled, but he didn't look away. That night, Ethan rocked his son in the nursery, staring out the window at the streetlights below. He whispered softly into the baby's ear. You're all I care about now. You and me. That's it. The words were both vow and curse. As the weeks passed, Ethan grew closer to his son, but further from Claire. He loved the way the baby's tiny hand wrapped around his finger, the way his eyes lit up when Ethan leaned over the crib. He felt pride when the pediatrician praised the child's health, when relatives cooed about how strong he looked. For the first time, Ethan felt like he had purpose. But every moment of joy was shadowed by bitterness. Because the foundation of his family, the marriage that was supposed to hold it all together, had already rotted. Eventually, the silence between him and Claire became unbearable. One night, after putting the baby down, Ethan sat across from her at the kitchen table. The air smelled of reheated pasta and neither of them had eaten. I think we should separate, he said. The words were steady, final. Claire's fork clattered against the plate. Her eyes widened, filling with tears. Ethan, no. Please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can. He shook his head. It's not about fixing. It's about trust. And that's gone. I'll never get it back. You killed it. She reached across the table, but he pulled his hands into his lap. Don't, he muttered. Her tears spilled freely now. What about him? She gestured toward the nursery, where their son slept. He deserves a family. He deserves both of us. He is both of us, Ethan said quietly. But not like this. Not under the same roof, pretending we're something we're not. Claire sobbed into her hands. Ethan stood, walked past her, and closed himself in the guest room. The next morning, Claire said nothing. Neither did Ethan. A week later, Ethan began sleeping on the couch instead of the guest room. A month after that, he started packing boxes. Not all at once. First just clothes, then books, then his laptop and work files. Claire watched silently, broken, but didn't stop him. She knew better by then. When Ethan finally carried the last box down to his car, the baby strapped into a carrier on his chest, Claire stood in the doorway, tears running silently down her face. "Where will you go?" she whispered. "Somewhere quiet," he said. "Somewhere he can grow up without all this poison in the walls." She nodded weakly, clutching the doorframe as though it held her upright. "Can I see him?" Ethan looked down at his son, asleep against his chest. Then he looked back at her. "You're his mother. You'll see him. But not like this. Not until we figure things out." Claire broke then, sobbing openly. Ethan turned away, got into the car, and drove off. As the city skyline shrank in his rearview mirror, Ethan felt both heavier and lighter. He had lost the marriage, lost the woman he thought he knew. But he had gained clarity. He had his son, and that was enough. Still, the ghost of the bracelet lingered in his mind. Those 5 letters, Taylor, burned into his memory. No matter where he went, no matter what future he built, he knew he would carry that reminder forever. 5 years later, the playground was full of noise, children shrieking with laughter, sneakers pounding across rubber mats, the creak of swings rising and falling. Parents clustered on benches, sipping coffee from paper cups, chatting about schools, soccer leagues, birthday parties. Ethan sat on the far end of the bench row, a thermos in his hand, watching his son climb the slide ladder. "Come on, Dad, watch this," the boy called, his voice high and eager. "I'm watching," Ethan said with a smile. The boy scrambled up, reached the top, then slid down with a triumphant shout, tumbling into a pile of mulch at the bottom. He popped up, brushing himself off, laughing. Ethan's chest warmed at the sight. Every day, every small victory, every scraped knee, it was all his. His son. The boy ran back to the ladder, already ready for another round. Ethan took a sip from the thermos, the coffee lukewarm but comforting. His life looked different now. The apartment in Chicago was long gone. He'd traded skyscrapers for suburbs, gray winters for quieter streets. The townhouse he rented wasn't much, but it had a backyard, a swing set, and enough space for his son's growing world. His days were simple: work, parenting, the occasional phone call with his parents. He had no interest in dating again. Romance felt like a dead language, one he no longer needed to speak. His life revolved around his son, and that was enough. Most days. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, when he tucked his son into bed, when he folded tiny socks fresh from the dryer, when he stood at the kitchen counter alone at midnight, he thought of Claire. She lived across the city now, in a small apartment near the lake. They shared custody. The boy spent weekends with her, sometimes whole weeks in the summer. Ethan knew Ryan had drifted back into her life. He saw glimpses of it in the background of photos his son brought home, in the way Claire's voice softened when she said Ryan's name. At first, Ethan raged at the thought. Ryan, the man who had poisoned everything, who had stolen what little trust Ethan had left, now a part of his son's world. But eventually, even that rage dulled. There were only so many battles a man could fight. The boy never asked many questions. He called Ethan Dad, and he called Claire Mom. He didn't yet understand the fractures beneath the surface, the wounds that had shaped his life before he could even crawl. Ethan hoped he never would. Still, there were reminders. Like the bracelet. Ethan had kept it, tucked away in a shoebox at the back of his closet. The hospital bracelet, small and white, with Taylor printed in bold letters. He couldn't bring himself to throw it away. It was a scar in plastic, a reminder of the day his life split in two. Sometimes, late at night, he would take it out and hold it, the weight of memory pressing on his chest. It wasn't about Ryan anymore. It wasn't even about Claire. It was about the fracture in himself. The man he had been before, full of hope, and the man he became after, full of doubt. He couldn't erase that moment. He could only live with it. At the playground, his son climbed again, slid again, laughed again. Ethan watched, smiling faintly, sipping his coffee. A woman on the next bench leaned over, nodding toward the boy. "He's yours?" she asked warmly. "Yes," Ethan said simply. "He looks just like you." Ethan's smile faltered for a heartbeat. Then he nodded. "Yeah, he does." The boy ran up to him then, breathless, cheeks flushed. "Did you see me, Dad?" I went faster that time. I saw, Ethan said, ruffling his hair. You were amazing. The boy grinned, leaning against him, small arms wrapping around his waist. Ethan held him close, inhaling the scent of dirt and sunshine. For a moment, everything else, Claire, Ryan, the bracelet, faded. All that mattered was this: the warmth of his son's body, the laughter bubbling out of him, the simple joy of being a father. But when the boy ran off again, Ethan's eyes lingered on the playground, the parents, the sky turning gold in the late afternoon. And in the quiet corners of his mind, the ghost of the bracelet still whispered, Taylor. It would never leave him. It had branded him, reshaped him, redefined him. He could build a new life, raise his son with love and patience, carve out something stable from the ruins. But the fracture would always remain. He took another sip of coffee, the bitterness grounding him. His son waved from the top of the slide. Dad, watch me again. Ethan smiled, lifting a hand. Always. And for the first time in a long time, the word felt true.